Hello, my friends, and welcome to a special combined episode of the Financial Conflict Coach Show and Inside the Debt Black Hole. I'm Dave Hilton. The reason I wanted to combine this particular episode of the two shows is because this horrific event that happened in Colorado at the movie theater on Friday has an impact on both websites. And instead of doing separate videos, I decided to put this one together so that I could talk about both geek culture and financial conflict. The horrible violence that happened is just, I can't even describe how I felt this entire weekend. My thoughts and prayers are going out to the families and friends of those who have lost their lives, the ones who are still alive and fighting for their lives, and everyone who is involved there in Aurora, Colorado. Now, this particular guy who decided to go in and ruin somebody's experience, a lot of people's experience of going to the movies, it didn't only affect the people there in Aurora, but it has affected people all across the country. And the reason I wanted to talk about this today is because, well, I decided to take my family to go see The Dark Knight Rises yesterday. Now, I'm recording this particular show on Sunday, so we went yesterday, and it already, just that horrific incident, has had an impact, even here in Texas, on how people go to the movies. Because I noticed that when we went to the movie theater, absolutely nobody sat up front in the movie theater. Not a single person. In fact, I've never seen it quite like that. There were people who didn't know each other. They were all sitting right next to each other. And we were in a big theater to see this. I mean, it was one of the bigger theaters at this particular complex. But nobody wanted to sit up close, front to the exits that were up there, or close to the screen. We were all sitting to the back. And I can't tell you how observant I was. Sure, I was enjoying the movie. I was trying my best to enjoy the movie, but I've never paid much attention to the people who get up and come into the theater whenever I'm watching a movie until my experience yesterday. And I noticed that everybody around me had the same kind of thing. They were watching the movie, they were trying to enjoy themselves, but again, every time you'd hear the door open behind us, everybody's eyes would go just to see who it was and what it was. Now, there was an obvious police presence at the movie theater yesterday. Not only unmarked police cars for the town we were in, but also marked police cars, as well as police officers inside the theater. So even though we had that presence, people were still on edge about going to the movies. It's one of those things where you have that fight or flight instinct, but you see a little bit of protection there with the police, so you're going to go, but you're still going to be a little concerned. You're going to be very observant, at least more so than most people. I mean, there's nothing that I can say about this kid. In fact, I'm not even going to talk. I'm not even going to say his name. Because as the financial conflict coach, just as a conflict coach, I can tell you that I'm not immune to conflict. I'm not immune to anger. The anger that I feel is extreme towards this individual. I don't know him, never met him. I've only seen pictures of him, heard stories about him on the news. But the anger that I feel towards him is extreme. And again, as a conflict coach, I'm not immune to feeling anger, to feeling emotions, to feeling anything that has to do with the conflict. But I can tell you as a geek, and this is where the Inside the Debt Black Hole comes in, I'm a huge Batman fan, and I have been for a long time. I have several older editions of the Batman comics because I see the value not only of reading them and reading those stories, but just the story itself. And to think that this kid had the balls to come out and say, well, here, I'm the Joker. And they said that he dyed his hair red. Well, as far as I know, and maybe I haven't read I admit I haven't read every Batman comic, but I can tell you that I never remember seeing the Joker have red hair. I remember the Riddler having red hair, but not the Joker. So first off, he's ruining, and he's coming out and talking out his ass, essentially, about the Joker, and that's what he is, and he's dressed up in all this military gear, and people can't even dress up now to go to the theater. So cosplay, costume wearing to go to the movies now will most likely be ruined, at least wearing a full mask or something like that. I'm sure people could still, I mean, when the Man of Steel comes out, that people will still be able to dress up as Superman. But as far as covering your face and having fake weapons or any type of thing that looks like a weapon, most likely you're not going to be able to see that at movies anymore. I mean, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I mean, people who do that, people who'd like to dress up and do cosplay, they really enjoy it and they really get into it. Now, my question is, will this affect any of the Comic-Cons that come up, maybe Dragon Con that's coming up in September in Atlanta. How will this incident affect the people who like to dress up maybe as Halo characters or other, the first-person shooter game characters where you have the masks on, you have this. I wonder if this particular incident will change the way people can interact with each other and dress up and do things at Comic-Cons now. Now, as the financial conflict coach, I'm thinking to the future now, because as these families, as these people who are dealing with the grief, with the pain, with the agony, with the fear of just the thought of going to the movies now, how will this be affected as far as lawsuits? Because I'm thinking now, I heard the statement from the CEO of Cinemark, which is actually based here in Texas, down here in Plano, just down the street from where I live, when he came out and saying that their sympathies go out to the families. It won't be too long until lawyers get involved. In fact, even though I'm recording this on Sunday, something tells me that even though that incident happened on Friday, something tells me that there are already lawyers involved. So the financial conflict that is going to be created from this particular incident, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to this, because that Cinemark will likely get sued. I'd almost say 100% guarantee that they'll be sued by at least one person, if not a bunch of the families and friends or the individuals who were harmed. Also the mall, I have a feeling that the mall will also be sued. And then there are other people that I'm thinking that perhaps, and it should be interesting to see if this actually happens, that perhaps DC Comics is sued, the producers of The Dark Knight Rises be sued, and I wouldn't doubt it if some lawyers decide to try to sue some of maybe the actors or even Christopher Nolan, the director of The Dark Knight Rises. It wouldn't surprise me if I see them listed on some of these lawsuits. Now, what do they have to do with it? That's for the courts to decide. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but just the legal system and how lawsuits work is very interesting from a standpoint from a financial conflict coach. But now that I've talked about both sides, from inside the debt black hole and from the financial conflict coach style, both of those insights and thoughts, I can't tell you how upsetting it is to me to know not only that other people are having problems going to the movies, which has always been, for Americans, that has been our escape. You go to the movies to get away from real life. You take those 2 hours or those 3 hours that you're sitting in that theater, and everything outside of that room goes away. And now that escape has been shattered by the senseless violence. Even my daughter and my son were afraid, a little afraid, to go to the movies. And I'm pretty sure that most parents will have issues now sending their young kids to go to the movies by themselves. And that's always been a rite of passage. At least it was for me, and I know it was for my wife. But it's always been a rite of passage that you get to that point, you get to that age where, I'm able to go to the movies by myself. That's one form of entertainment that I can go do by myself. And I wonder how this is going to affect the ability for the kids who are getting older. Because I have to admit, I will question if my daughter comes to me and says, hey, all my friends want to go to the movies. I don't care if it's a comic book movie or if it's a girly flick. I'm going to have second thoughts of letting her go by herself just because of this incident. Now, I know it shouldn't affect me this much, but it does. And it affects me that this movie has been ruined. And it was a really good movie. I really enjoyed the movie. I like the action. I like everything that was in that movie. But this movie will always be associated with this horrible, senseless act of violence. And I think that's unfortunate. Not only for the people who were in it, but for the people who put it together, the people who worked hard to make it all come to true. So I'm sitting here, even, again, it's Sunday, and I'm having a hard time coming up with the words, which is usually not something that I have a problem with talking. But without just wanting to scream and to yell, and to just go to this kid and say, what were you thinking? And I know that there will be people who write books and articles and do research studies on this kid. And I know he's not cooperating with police, but how dare one person like this have such an impact on our lives and our entertainment? So I'd love to hear your comments or your questions or your thoughts about all of this, either from the geek culture aspect from inside the debt black hole, or as the financial conflict coach, just from a standpoint of conflict for those of you who are watching who have a dispute resolution or legal background. I'd love to hear your stories and your thoughts and what you think will happen and how this will impact not only movie-going in the future, but also the Comic-Cons and people dressing up and cosplay, and what kind of a financial impact you think this will have on the movie theaters and the movie industry in general. So leave your comments down below. Feel free to email me if you'd like to. A couple different ways you can do that. You could email me, dave@DebtBlackHole.com. You can also email me at dave@FinancialConflictCoach.com. You can also find me on Twitter, either at DebtBlackHole or at MoneyConflicts. Well, you guys, hopefully you have a great week. Thanks for watching.